Alright, so here's a little video on how I like to do Japanese inspired waves. I like to start with just keeping it reasonably loose um, and getting some movement and some gesture that make it kind of interesting and give a little variation to the waves. So I just kind of start like this. Just kind of real loose and fast. And if you want to kind of like throw the waves a little bit, you can like kind of change the size and kind of like move them into a direction. And then you can kind of start moving them back a little bit too if you want to get some different directions going with the waves. You can kind of like make it a little bit more horizontal or a little bit more vertical, depending on which way you want the waves to move. You can add some like little extra ones on there. And you kind of get the start of your waves. Once I have that, I like to try to start to define the waves a little bit more. I kind of like to do this kind of pointed shape for mine. I like to try to start with the top part of the wave and then bring it into the previous finger wave. So I have some kind of starting points right here. And I'll just kind of start to define these a little bit more. And then kind of when I get to some of these spots where it kind of loops back, kind of like give it just a little bit of like free form, kind of like wiggle as it's looping back into the next wave. Add one of these if you want. And you can kind of just repeat the process if you want to add another layer of waves. Start with this kind of loose gestural drawing. You can kind of just connect it back into the first layer. If you want to kind of just loop this through on this top one, you can do something like that. And then to make it a little bit more interesting, I like to try and loop through some of these existing waves into the next one. And it can kind of cross underneath some of these. And it starts to kind of connect the flow of the two layers. So they're not as much two distinct different points next to each other. They're kind of becoming integrated as water would kind of like mix together a little bit more. I like to try and add maybe even a couple more little tinier waves just to give some variation as well. And you can kind of throw them coming off of these previous waves that you have. You can kind of just repeat the process as necessary if you want to keep adding different layers of waves. can kind of get as like wild as you want. Adding a little bit of variation here or there just to make it seem a little bit more natural, so it's not overly stiff and uniform. And that's it.